Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here to this first episode of Biotech Appetizers. And well, today we will feature the venture capital ecosystem in Spain and guide it from the best possible expert, as we can see here, Dr. Luis Pareras, which is founder and managing partner at Invivo Partners. And well, yeah, for us, Luis, is such a huge pleasure receiving you from beautiful Barcelona. Luis is managing partner at Invivo Partners, and well, when I talk about him to friends and relatives, I usually refer to Luis as modern Da Vinci, and you may start wondering why. And well, Luis, apart from being a neurosurgeon, as we will see now, and successfully leading a venture capital company such as Invivo Partners, he's a lifelong programmer, developing impressive mind charts and AI softwares, as you can check out in his LinkedIn and YouTube profiles. He has hosted, besides from this, he has hosted several modern art exhibitions where he was the featured artist. And well, gifted with a beautiful mind, Luis likes to start his days recalling that he's already 6 months late, as a big billboard says at his office, giving you a self-explanatory example of Luis' mentality. And so welcome to Nucleate Spain, Luis. Welcome home. And it's such a huge pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me indeed, Joan. What a kind intro. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So without further delay, so the appetizers index will follow this second. So we will start with a couple of questions introducing Dr. Pareras' background and how he made this step into venture capital. Then we will focus on Invivo Partners and early stage biotech. Third, we will, Luis will tell us how he's working at a VC, coupled with real world scenarios and day-to-day in a day-to-day basis. And finally, we will give a short outlook into AI in the VC world, and also explore some general, both philosophical and ethical questions. So let's start without further delay. So introducing Dr. Perez, as I have already done. He's such a talented person. So maybe, Luis, the first question would be, how does a renowned surgeon as yourself become venture capitalist? And yeah, you can extend yourselves how long you went in, how this pathway has been along your life.
Well, it is a long story indeed, but I will try to summarize, because I moved from neurosurgery first to be an entrepreneur, and being at the other side of the table, asking for money, I fundraised, I built a company, and I was not successful, by the way. The company ultimately failed after quite a few years of very big success. And then finally, I did an MBA in the States, and when I came back to Spain, I wanted to fundraise for a venture capital fund, and it was a difficult moment in time. However, I was lucky enough to fund for my first fund. It was a very small fund, but after that, after the success of the first fund, it was easier then to get to fund number 2, fund number 3. Now we're fundraising for another vertical fund. So I don't know, things are going well.
Excellent. Big compliments. And how long ago did everything started? In which year?
Wow, it was like I think I switched from neurosurgery to entrepreneurship 2004.
Okay, so almost 22 years of career. So yeah, it's simply amazing. So moving to the next question is, well, as you have now obviously summarized a lot, but would you repeat the same steps that you took after leaving clinical practice and considering nowadays context, or would you do something different from how you did?
I would do exactly the same, to be honest, because including the mistakes, because our mistakes help define who we are as well, right? And shape what we do, our views on life. I don't know. I made a lot of mistakes, don't misunderstand me. There could be a lot of things to change, but very humbly, I wouldn't change anything at this moment in time of my life. I think I've got a position of very real privilege. I feel very privileged doing what I do for a living. I mean, investing in companies gives you a perspective on the state-of-the-art science that leads innovations around the world. You're surrounded with incredibly smart people. I learn every day from everyone around me, including the team, by the way. And it feels such as an enormous privilege. So again, no changes. I'm happy with even my mistakes.
Perfect. Yeah, well, at the end, we are a product of the past experiences and years. So people, some want to regret or not, but at the end, we are just the end product of the actual person. So amazing answer, Luis, and thank you so much for this kind introduction. And then let's move to Invivo and the early stage biotech ecosystem in Spain. So let's start with how did Invivo get launched? Your partnership with Albert. If you can elaborate a little bit on how did Invivo get launched?
Well, the first fund of anyone is always a very big challenge. You know, I mean, I wanted to fundraise for a venture capital fund. I thought, I told to myself, Luis, I think you have something to add to this world. I was very attracted with the fact of investing in companies, and then first thing I did was to try and locate somebody who I could trust and who somehow could complement the things that I was adding to or putting on the table, right? So I needed someone with a more financial background, and I met Albert, and it was love at first sight, and we started. About the timing, it was a very difficult moment. We fundraised for a very small venture capital fund. I'm not ashamed at all about the size, because it was just a 10 million fund. It was a difficult moment in time to fundraise. But with these 10 millions, we managed to attract 240 millions of other VCs into the companies that we chose. And finally, we had from this fund 3 exits, if I remember correctly. It was very successful from the point of view of returns, and that helped us tremendously in fundraising for the second fund or the third fund. However, I would like to about the timing, because I mentioned it was a difficult time, right? So many entrepreneurs or many people that want to come to the venture capital world think I should wait until the perfect moment, but let me tell you, the perfect moment does not exist. Okay, so and one of my favorite quotes is life rewards action, not intelligence, right? So it doesn't matter if you're very intelligent, not so much intelligent. At the end of the day, what matters is the drive and the commitment and pushing forward and actually doing things, right? So the perfect moment doesn't exist, and you should move forward. If you have an ambition and it's very specific, you should go after it, yes.
Innovation as a driving force, right? Amazing. And the exact year of Invivo launch, which year did it? Because you always say this complicated context. It was the economic crisis, I guess.
I think the vintage was, I mean, let me be correcting. It was like 12 years ago. 12 years ago was the first fund. And so far, 3 funds up and running. Plus, we're fundraising for our 4th right now.
Amazing. Perfect. So, moving on to nowadays, so already you can imagine all the years you said. So nowadays, as you are saying, closing almost the 4th fund. So do you still perceive it as your baby child in terms of that is your creature and your creation, or is it already becoming this unruly adolescent that is difficult to control, that wants to take its own decisions? How do you manage these expectations? Fulfillments in terms of how big do you want the company to grow?
What a great question, Joan. I like the metaphor of unruly adolescent, because it really looks like that. You know, I mean, the fund is growing. Of course, we started very small. Now we have 150 millions plus under management. So now the size is quite different. The size of the team is quite different as well, and the challenges and managing such a great team and everything makes it an unruly adolescent, because things don't go exactly as you plan. I mean, they never go exactly as you plan, right? So it feels like it's fighting me back on some of the decisions, as an unruly adolescent would do. And,
exactly.
But so far we get along quite well, and there's some common ground with where everybody aligns, and I'm very happy with the team we've built, and the team we're gonna build in the next years, of course, because our plan is to keep on growing, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Yes.
Amazing. And do you have a, let's say, goal of growing? So you say, okay, until I do, I don't know, fund 6, and then I will do something else. Do you have anything in mind, or do you just?
I have figures and number of funds in my mind, but as I was mentioning, life never goes as planned. I think it was Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, the famous boxer, who said something like, everybody has a plan until the first punch. You know, after the first punch, there is no plan. You just need to make things happen. I don't know. I would love to have at least 3 more funds under my management, and probably 500 millions plus, something like that would be great, but in a decade. So let's go slowly, and I think
step by step.
Exactly, steady growth is much better than sudden growth,
absolutely,
which becomes unmanageable. We have a plan of slowly acquiring more companies and finding more capital to deploy, right? So we're just at it. Yeah.
Amazing. So moving on to the next question. So now really on the nature of Invivo. So why focusing on the raison d'être of Invivo? So why do you decided to focus on such a risky or the most risky science like basic research, instead of maybe going out or looking for medtech or diagnosis which are, let's say, safer in terms of more likely to achieve an exit? And if you can put some examples or your main reasons behind your raison d'être as company.
Interesting, because I will start by saying that I do not entirely agree with what you just said. I mean, meaning that medical devices or diagnostics or this type of thing. Well, maybe you are right, but my problem is I don't understand that field, because it's not my original field. And one of the basic principles of every investor is, look, you need to invest in something that you really understand, right? So it is very important. About high risk, you're very right. There's a lot of risk in what we do. However, I mean, let me explain that I can tolerate high risk. This is not a problem. With what I cannot tolerate is stupid risk. You know? So believe me, there's a difference. What we do is very risky, but it's an informed bet, you know, and we decide on a plan. The plan is never as expected. However, we have a rationale behind. So it's a controlled risk, because we know what we want to do, and then we manage the company along the way to make it do what we think it should be doing. But bottom line is, I don't mind high risk. What I mind is stupid risk, as I was mentioning. So we plan very carefully to de-risk the company as much as we can during the process. Yes.
Amazing. How let's say, if we would say a rough or guess a number, how long it takes the company or the team to decide from since you discover a startup or due to the flow, from which you start analyzing the company and you say, okay, this is a company I or we wanna invest in? How much in window time you would say it's more or less the analysis?
That's difficult to answer, because let me.
It depends.
But I think it's a very good question again. But let me reframe the problem, because it's not just about choosing the company I want to invest in. I will answer your question, don't worry. But let me do like a first step. It's not about choosing the company. First, here at Invivo, we choose the problem we want to solve, and that takes quite a lot of time. It's not like a trivial exercise. We take very seriously the fact that we need to be solving meaningful problems. Okay, and so that consumes time, but it looks like it's not time of choosing companies, but it is, because of course our way of investing is precisely choosing the right problem, then finding the best companies trying to solve that problem that we're interested in, and after that we pick the best company, we study the company, etc. So all in all, I think it takes for us, I'm ashamed to say, maybe 6 months or even a bit more. I know we are slow, but that part of the process, being slow, I think it has paid off for us, you know, because while we study the company, the CEO is promising things, and I can see if he is or she is delivering on those things. You know, we don't rush the decision to invest, but once we have invested, we run. I mean, this is one of you mentioned about this painting that I have at my office. It's quite famous by now. It just says you are 6 months late, and indeed we are 6 months late. But we need to think very carefully about the problem and do a benchmark among companies before choosing the right one. So yeah, I would say 6 months.
Amazing. Yeah. So first choosing the problem and then deciding where to invest is such a logic, but also time-consuming procedure. So yeah, amazing, Luis. Moving on to the next question. So from your entire portfolio until today, so from all what we have commented, so which is the startup deserving more of your excitement? So from the first investment you did until now, afterwards we will discuss about Eso Biotech, but from the first one to the last exit, which one and why is the company or the startup deserving more of your excitement, or saying, okay, I'm so proud of having invested in this company?
Well, if I'm understanding well your question, you're asking me what kid of mine I love the most, and that's impossible. I mean, I love them all equally, believe me. And when I say that, I'm a very high conviction investor, and I know every investor would say the same, but believe me, in our case, we are in love with the company we are investing in, for sure, because otherwise we wouldn't be making the investment in the first place. So it's a courting period where love gets set, and then after that love remains until the end of the company. Sometimes it's a write-off. I mean, I'm wrong.
Amazing. And just for the audience, Luis, you always give a number for the deal flow you receive each year. So can you please tell how many startups options or how many CEOs contact you in order for you to invest into them?
Every year, you mean? Yeah, I would say close to 1,000. Yeah.
So imagine, dear audience, as we said, so how they have to first to choose the problem and really try to set the foundings, and then really once the foundings are secure, really looking out for the startup or the startups that really can fit or can address this problem. So thanks, Luis, for these answers. And now moving a little bit on decision making. So you're before moving to day-to-day questions. But nowadays, how much percentage of your decisions are AI based, and how do you expect this AI based decision making in 5 years to grow, and in 10 years? So let's say in 10 or 20 years. So how do you expect this, or how do you envisage in the future this AI based decision making to be?
Yeah, well, we make a lot of use of AI here at our fund, but about the decision to invest, I would say in the chain of events and decisions that one needs to make, it's the last decision. I mean, it's after studying the company. I would say the AI does not play a role today, at least, in our decision to choose. However, it plays an immense role. You would, I mean, I know there's a lot of hype about AI, but our use of AI, I challenge everyone that's looking into your podcast to check on my LinkedIn one of the videos that we publish about the tools that we use, right? They are very humbly, I think they are quite sophisticated and immensely useful. So we use AI to choose the problems, because I monitor and I track through AI everything that happens in the field, right? Every M&A, every license, every funded company, every problem, every paper published. I mean, she reads constantly all this, and she helps me, or she helps us in finding the right trends. We also study companies very quickly. I mean, we have like a triage AI that in just 1 minute you drop a deck and it gives you the score that we would give to that company. Believe me, she's never wrong. Oh, she's, of course, I mean, she's almost never wrong. She's a tremendous help in order to discard the projects that we want to study deeply, and the ones that we don't need to study because they are not aligned with our portfolio. Then it helps us doing the full due diligence. It helps us doing the profile of the CEOs. It helps us doing the competitive landscape. It helps us imagining the case for an early exit scenario. I mean, it produces reports like the ones from a banker. Again, if you look at my videos, you will understand. I mean, this is not just hype. This is real. So I would say it helps a lot during the process. I would say she's at the level of an analyst, but not at the level of an associate or a principal or a partner, of course, right? So she's like entry level, but nevertheless immensely useful. Yeah.
Amazing, Luis. And so, and here you always refer to Aya. So for the audience, Aya is artificial intelligence analyst that Luis refers to as Aya, and he always refers to her as a she. So talking about a machine, just a really simple question. So why do you envisage AI as a she and not as a it or as a he? It's just something that we as society have kind of skewed from our education, or why do you refer to her as a she?
I mean, in fact, it should be an it for sure, right? However, I think it's easier to communicate with her. You need to understand that I talk to this artificial intelligence analyst, I mean, during the day, a lot of times, and I think it helps to see her as not as a tool, because if you look at her as a tool, it becomes a bit repetitive, everything. I see her more as a colleague, right? Even if, of course, she's not a colleague in the real sense, but I talk to her. Everything that I ask from her, again, check the videos, it's a verbal thing, you know. I mean, I just she's probably listening, and I call her and she reacts, and we engage in a dialogue. But the most important thing is that the Aya that I coded has infinite memory, even if it looks like it's impossible. Of course, I mean, when I say infinite memory, I mean a very big memory, okay, not infinite. But she remembers everything that we've talked about in the last year, for sure. I can use her. Remind me who I met from, I don't know, Centerview when we sold I don't know, Biotech, for example, and she remembers that. She summarizes the conversation and everything. So she keeps track. I like to call her like a mini-me, because she's trained based on my input. It's a reinforcement learning transformer, and of course it's not anymore about her being right or wrong, but if I'm wrong, she's going to be wrong as well, because she has my taste, and I'm not claiming that my taste is the best one in the world, but it's my taste, and I want her to be like a mini-me, you know. So she helps me precisely because she's very tuned to what I think, and not just to objective criteria. Yeah.
Amazing. So and nowadays you let's say you have programmed her so far, and she's constantly learning. So in this, let's say 5-10 years, so in the short term, or maybe if you want to move directly to the long term, do you expect her to to be, as you said, maybe not or not, let's say, the capacity to reach not level partner level, but maybe associate partner or partner level in terms of really being able to not only discriminate but also adding this value to, let's say, okay, I have helped you identifying the problem, and then I am helping you from all the possible startups that we are or that are eligible to select this one based on all the let's say all the arguments that she can.
She's already at that level. I mean,
she's already
yeah. But again, she's already at analyst level. Okay. What is the difference between an analyst and an associate, which would be the next immediate step of the way? I'd say, I mean, or let me answer you in a different way. What does Aya do wrong? I mean, what she's not good at so far, right? For example, reading the room, or evaluating the character and the will of a potential CEO. I mean, these type of things that have to do more with soft skills.
Exactly.
She's super analytical, super helpful in crunching data and finding patterns and recommending things, being logical. But reading the room at a board, for example, would be very difficult for her. So analysts don't go to boards, but associates start to go first as observers, of course, but ultimately, once you become a principal, as board directors, and that is not solved yet. But it will come. You were asking about the progression of the field. I think the field is going to progress very quickly. It's going to surprise us tremendously.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Luis. So and maybe more of a general question, so regarding you as leading and managing partner of Invivo. So in the pursuit of perfection that all companies have, in the specific case of Invivo, so what asset do you consider, maybe from all the, let's say, big assets you have right now? So an extra asset you think, or you are thinking of, okay, I could benefit from it? Or if you say, oh, I'm already very satisfied with everything we have?
I'm never satisfied with anything. That's my way of thinking. Yeah, assets, of course, when you mention the word asset,
it can be both, so personal, machine, anything,
exactly.
software.
So I would turn the word asset into more like human behavior assets. You know, for example, there are things that are very important, and I love, for example, to develop the idea of optionality to the team, right? I mean, trying to keep all options open until the very last minute. I always thought that this was a very good strategy for deciding. I mean, if you force me to decide, I probably won't. I will decide on anything at the end. And for some people, it would say you are in not decisive enough, or you're not. No, listen. I decide at the end because I have more intel. This is a moment in time. Maybe I inherited this from my MD life in the past. I mean, when operating a patient, you look at the MRI at the surgical room already for the last time, and you make your final decision there, because maybe the test that you did yesterday changed completely the picture and you need to do something different, right? By the way, can I tell you like an anecdote that I love? Because when I was explaining about this, looking into the MRI, there's one frame of mind that I love as well in the team that I learned when I was a resident in neurosurgery, okay? I learned from one colleague that was my mentor at the time. I won't name names because I would say half of what I know about neurosurgery, I know it through him, right? He was the senior surgeon when I was the resident of neurosurgery, I mean the junior surgeon, right? And he used to do something that mesmerizes me. It's one of my favorite anecdotes of my life. I mean, he would go with me to the operating room, put the MRI images into the negatoscope, and start explaining me, Luis, we're gonna go I don't know, through under the frontal lobe to reach this aneurysm. And he started explaining why it should be the case. And his arguments were incredibly convincing. And I ended the discussion like saying, yeah, we need to go under the frontal lobe. But then at the end, he always like a cliffhanger, right? He stopped for a second. Every time, it was the joke of the day. Every time he would stop and then say, or maybe not. And then he would start again saying, no, Luis, we need to go subtemporal in this case. Because look, we're going to and you just decided on frontal and then you're moving into temporal. And the point of this was, to keep all options open until the end. And I think intelligence is the ability to sustain two opposite premises in your head and debate without taking a side until the very end. I think very humbly, I think that's intelligence. That's the ability of holding several views in your head and be able to debate all the views
and to manage exactly
at the same time.
Amazing, Luis. Thank you so much for sharing this anecdote. And at the end, as you said, so having mentors in your life, that so for all the items that is really now starting, selecting the laboratory or selecting the let's say the PhD pathway is not as important as really be, or let's say admire your leading expert or your PI, because at the end is the people or are the persons that really are going to lead our first steps into the academical world. And as Luis said, you may remember 20, 30, 40 years after the encounters with them, beautiful anecdotes that as Luis explained, and is really one of the magical parts of life as researchers that we are, or let's say surgeons or doctors in general, so that we are really almost depending on one or two people, and these people are going to be really, really important in our lives. So thank you, Luis, so much for sharing it with us. Moving into the next chapter. So now really focusing on working at Biotech VC. So by the way, all the images I'm displaying are generated by AI, this Midjourney tool that for me works fantastic. Many people, if you would say, okay, how can I define VC? Maybe this image like burning money on ideas while wearing tuxedos, but let's say a possible figure or representation or illustration for many people. But really starting with the way or how is a daily life basis working at a biotech venture capital company. So for you, Luis, how is a standard workday for yourself, and how much, if it's the case, how much it differs from that of your employees?
Yes, so my day, my job is, first, I worry.
Difficult to explain.
No, I worry, and that's my job. I'm worried about everything, so I'm in need of trying to get everything under control. There are so many things going on a very single day. You would be surprised, because there are many companies. We talk to the companies I would say every day, or maybe that's an exaggeration, but very, very often, and there are problems that arise, and then we're studying the new company. So it's a very intense from the point of view of different things that we're doing at the same time. And that could be, for some people it could be mentally exhausting, so you need to have some escape. You have the risk of decision fatigue. I sometimes I arrive late at night to my place and I don't want to decide about anything. I just want to have a glass of wine. But I would say my most important job is to find the reasons why to invest. Because the best thing you can bring into an investment is a reason why. Okay, so I'm very focused on the strategy of the whole group, and I'm very focused on the ultimate decisions on investments. And to my table, at the end of the day, the everything is a problem. I don't get the luxury of of dealing with the beautiful things, if I may say, right? So I deal with the ugly things,
with the problems.
yeah, and but that's my job. I do,
and you love it.
yeah, and I love it indeed. It's a privilege, right? So yeah.
Magnificent. So yeah, I imagine then that it really differs a lot, right, from your employees, maybe of course the analysts, but maybe associate and partners. We will talk in a couple of questions after this one about the progression from analyst to partner, but I guess it's nothing comparable to other of your employees.
No, I mean it is actually, it's quite similar, but of course with different levels of responsibility. But the analysts, I mean, I try for them to participate in everything. They join the boards with me as observers or with any of the other partners, and yeah, it's the if you, I mean, the difference is only in the level of responsibility of the decisions you make, but I encourage everyone to be making decisions. Actually, I ask them to solve things, not to just, I don't know, do a good analysis. No, it's not about doing a good analysis, it's about solving problems, adding value, right? So, yeah, and I get here, I am the first one getting to the office. I'm very proud of that. I'm sitting at my desk already at 7:30 maximum, because this very first hour of the day is tremendously efficient for me. I'm probably a morning person, although I suffer from a very severe insomnia, but that's I don't want to bother the audience with the details, but yeah, but I get up very early and I come here very early, and yeah, and there's not a very big difference between people working here and what I do. No.
Amazing. I was reflecting, Luis, when as long as you were talking, that you really are the example of how to be a leader and not how to be a boss, right? This difference between leader and boss, that the leader really has to give example to their employees and well.
Sometimes I'm grumpy. I'm sure if you ask around, maybe you would not get exactly the same definition that you used, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's about making things work, and we all care about the patient of the future. So let's do the things in the right way and put, very important, the right amount of effort into the things, right? I mean, absolutely. I value a lot commitment or work ethics, or I mean, you name it, but this intensity in your job is very important. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. By the way, a question popped up into my mind when you were talking about that you will spend the whole day, let's say, addressing or figuring out the problem. So when we talked earlier about how AI helps you choosing the problem, or choosing let's say, potential good problem to address or to tackle. So from the point you say, okay, we have identified one problem until you identify the next one. So it's let's say, do you analyze problems in parallel, or you wait for a problem, let's say, to be solved by investing in 2-3 startups and then move on to the next problem?
We certainly work in problems in parallel, of course.
In parallel.
There are many problems to be solved. But listen, the art of choosing the right problem to solve is not that obvious, if I may. I mean, it looks like, I don't know, the problem that excites me the most, but that's not actually enough, you know? I mean, a problem for us, of course, this is a bit proprietary in the sense that we don't share exactly what a good problem is, because there are competitive forces in what we do, of course, as well, right? But let me give you like a very brief overview without going into much detail. But a problem, in order to be an interesting problem to be solved, needs, of course, and excuse me for mentioning, but many people forget, it needs to be not solved yet, which is important. I mean, if you have, I don't know, if you want to do now a cell therapy in hematological malignancies, if you look at the space, I mean, some CAR-Ts already have 98% of overall survival several years ahead. So, I mean, this problem is solved. Now we need to move into solid tumors, of course, or maybe in other indications, autoimmune or fibrosis or aging or whatever, but not that. I mean, first, a problem, in order to be a good problem to solve, needs to be unsolved, of course. Secondly, it needs to have a dismal outcome if not solved, right? So its consequences need to be important, okay? And third, I would say it needs to be easy to, in case you solve it, it needs to be very straightforward to prove that you have solved it. That means having endpoints that are interesting and having time points that are interesting. This is not a technical podcast, of course, and I won't go into very deep details, but the problem needs to be as easy as possible in order for us to solve it. And there are several more qualities, but in a nutshell, choosing the right problem is not that easy. It's an important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can imagine. And from a time window perspective, so from the point you identify a problem until let's say you invest in a startup trying to address this problem, how much time can it range from one point to the let's say the investment point? And the second question coupled to this is, if with this investment decision, the problem you consider it to be completely, or let's say finally closed, or you are always waiting, or let's say analyzing and probably in the next round of, or let's say in another fund, maybe you identify a new sub-problem from this problem, and then you decide to invest again, just as a, let's say, conceptual question.
No, of course. I would say it's a variable time, but it takes from 3 months to 1 year once we have chosen the problem in order to find the right company. However, if you don't run, I mean, my painting about you are 6 months late is there for a reason, right? I mean, if you wait for too long, the problem becomes maybe solved already, or because what entrepreneurs don't realize, it's not about being efficacious at phase 2. For example, they say, no, if the drug shows the delta on the patient, we're going to sell the company and it's going to be huge success, right? Wrong. Very wrong.
Absolutely.
Because you not only need to be efficacious, you need to be more efficacious than the rest of the drug compounds that are coming as well parallel to yours, so you need to offer the best delta with the best safety profile possible, and for that stars need to align. So you better diversify on your investments, because even when choosing correctly, because we're talking all the time about choosing, and I think going for a second back to your previous question to connect something there, my job is not exactly to pick the winners, but in a way to making them. I mean, because it's not just about choosing, it's about the governance of the company at the early stage in the first years, doing the right things, finding the right partners, attracting the right venture capital firms, and eventually choosing the right pharma to try to do business development and ultimately sell the drug to them, right? So choosing is, I'm not saying it is.
It's not the word.
It's very important, but it's not the only thing. I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and precisely that not choosing, but rather helping them, right, and giving them the resources to really grow into what you expect that startup to become one day. So absolutely. And then moving to the next one is really what we are discussing right now. So, but really maybe if you can give some example or in terms of the investment procedure, how has it changed since you started? And nowadays, for example, in terms of the amount of deal flow, IPOs, M&As, NDAs, ticket sizes, or whatever example you want to tell us, or your experience in comparing all the tools you had at that time and you have nowadays, wherever you like to elaborate.
Yeah, well, we have sophisticated our procedures, of course, as we grew. As usual in life, when you start, I mean, I go back in time and I see some decisions that I've made in the past, for example, in my first fund, which again was very humbly quite successful, but there are things that I revisit today and I tell to myself, you were crazy. I mean, you had no idea what you were doing. So,
can you tell an example, or it's let's say
the problem with this is that every example would spark. I cannot name names, but I'm sure this frame of mind still will be here 10 years from now. I will look back at today and I will think, Luis, you had no clue of what you were doing, right? Because we all learn. So yes, we've changed things. I change my mind so many times per year. A lot of times, believe me, because I go where the science tells me, and maybe some modality I don't particularly like, but then I read a couple of papers that show very good deltas on patients, very good results, and then I change completely my mind and I tell the team, look, we need to be looking for that particular modality and that particular indication right away, you know. And I just changed my mind because maybe 3 months before I was telling the team, don't accept any deal flow coming with this modality or this indication, right? So again, I changed my mind quite often, but I think that's healthy. I don't know. That's
absolutely
what should happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. In regard to this last sentence you said, you always say in your interviews that you know that you have, or let's say are prone to invest into a startup when there are not a unanimous opinion about that
that's
startup.
Something that people explain, and that's very correct. I mean, when I find when we're looking into a company that we believe is worth our time and ultimately our money investing, right? I typically socialize the idea with colleagues, maybe managing partners for other funds, maybe key opinion leaders, maybe physicians in my network that I want to consult with, the team, I don't know, everyone, right? And if everybody thinks it is a great idea, I don't invest.
You don't invest.
It's too late.
And did you had this mindset already when you started,
yes.
or you have, let's say, acquired with time?
I've been always an unruly adolescent, as you were mentioning, in the sense that I'm very contrarian in my style of investing. I go
your
where
nature.
People is not looking at, because the value is there. Of course, you need to pick very carefully the things that you like, but I don't see value in doing the same as anyone else. I mean, I think being a contrarian is important. And again, if everybody understands, it's too late, because I'm sure it's being done already by several science groups around the world, because it was evident, because it was obvious, everybody's understanding it. So I need some skepticism in order to say, wow, this is really leading edge, because we only invest in leading edge, and I need it to be leading edge. And that means that not everybody will understand the idea.
Exactly.
We're in a good position if that's the case, yes.
Amazing. So by the way, dear audience, Luis has written a book called Fast Forward Thinking, and really it's a, let's say, more than a summary of this, or let's say the expansion of this podcast. I encourage you to read it. It's really amazing, and really gives you a very nice overview of Luis' mentality about, let's say, actual, not only society in terms of professional work in VC and biotech, but also, again, let's say, common ethics and common sense. And it's really a brilliant book, and I just can only recommend it to you. And while preparing
I was wondering precisely, Joan, where did you get this anecdote? And yes, it is published in the book. Now I understand.
In the book, and I also heard it. I don't know where exactly I heard it to you, but I always recall it because it's a really good example of how, let's say, or what a divergent mind you have in terms of either let's say it cannot be that easy. It has to be something complicated. I have to reflect a lot upon it in order to, let's say, okay, someone has to tell me or I have to rely on the expert of this science because it's too complicated for me to understand. And this demonstrates your humbleness in terms of you really, let's say, analyze everything so well that at the end you just rely on not only Aya but also on the people, and for sure the CEOs trying to approach you.
And even with all that effort, we are wrong many times.
And exactly,
and that's part of the game. I mean, you cannot. I mean, if you have no failures, you're not an investor. That's
exactly. Yeah, completely. Thank you so much, Luis, for the explanation and the examples. Moving on, as I was saying, so while preparing the appetizers, I don't know how many time I spent, but this question was kind of a good example I tried to find in order for you, dear audience, to really emphasize or to really, let's say, being or imagine how can it be to working not only at PC but also working at a startup if it's the case you are involved in. So in this case, Luis, who does the good cap, bad cap roles when interacting with founded startups in, let's say, from the VC point of view, and how do you, let's say, the general approach to startups is from your point of view in venture capital?
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't think the good cop, bad cop framework really works in our field. Let me tell you a few things. First, it's about reaching an interesting compromise at the end of the day. So every deal needs to be a win-win situation. So yeah, maybe during negotiations you play, you are hard sometimes. But let me tell you something that's actually, I think it's very important. One of the most important things in which I believe in is the fact that in our game, in our industry, winning the match for 10-0, it's never in your best interest. I mean, you need to concede, because of course we are the source of capital and we could, I don't know, force things like a bulldozer, like saying, look, we're investing 10 millions, but only if blah, 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 right? But you need to find the common ground. And it is not wise to win the match for 10-0. I would say 6-4 is more than enough, right? So you need to be able to concede and to find a possible compromise in those negotiations. And it's not about, I mean, what I need to, it's not about good cop, bad cop, but about how well we understand the CEO. Sometimes we change the CEO because it's not the right.
Well, we will talk it about later.
Okay.
Sure.
But I always ask a question at the end of the meeting. I mean, not always, but quite a lot of times, which is I ask the CEO at the end of the meeting when he or she is already tired. It's a trick question, of course, right? But I ask him or her. What does keep you up at night? I mean, what could go wrong with this company, right? And there's two types of CEOs. The one that tells you, look, I mean, not getting the money is what could go wrong because everything else I have it under control, shows very bold, very confident. I don't know. I prefer the other type, which is what I call the optimistic paranoid, right? Which is a CEO that is worried about everything. He would start like, wow, we have a competitor in Los Angeles that is doing something similar. I worry about the FDA maybe putting a hold on this. Careful with dogs. I'm not happy with the IP. Careful with it, and I need to stop him or her, right, and say, okay, I understand, right? But this profile correlates better, in my humble opinion, with success than the bold, super confident profile. I typically love more these CEOs than the bold ones. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, people really driven by enthusiasm and really, like we said, their baby child is the one and only, and really they care about all the aspects it can not only go wrong but also fail, and they are constantly trying to address everything coming up. So yeah, amazing. Maybe moving a little bit backwards in terms of the specific role of the analyst, since the audience we are or our dear audience is let's say, well, I don't know how much or how different or how eclectic is our audience, but I expect them to be, let's say, masters or even bachelor students, or also PhD students or early postdocs. So if they would change into VC or give this step out of academia in order to join VC, how do you expect the role of the analyst as let's say the early entry stage into this world to evolve alongside the AI progression?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, the analyst job is, if you excuse my French, but I think it's very, I mean, it conveys a message. It's what I call a bullshit detector. Okay, so I want someone that is able to analyze projects and find the bullshit in them immediately. That's a good analyst that does this. Okay, and helps you prepare. I mean, provides you with a summary of the company, all the things that you need to know in order to have a clear picture of what the company is doing. So, yeah, and if you think that analysts are crunching data, looking into decks, etc., this, I'm sorry, because I don't want to be, but I think it's going to be replaced very soon. I don't think we will be hiring analysts in the future. I think we will be hiring directly associates, right?
Associates.
Because the analyst, I mean, the AI is able to do, I would say, almost exactly the same in minutes,
or even better, yeah.
with a very, believe me, very good quality. Of course, the other day somebody was asking me, yeah, but now and then the AI can invent things, right, or hallucinate or whatever, and my answer is, well, the analyst does hallucinate as well. So,
sure, yeah.
Right? So,
AIs are, let's say, reflections of human at the end. Neural networks work like our neurons, so we can, as they also we hallucinate. Amazing. Thank you so much, Luis, for this example. And talking again through the progression, right? So nowadays, as you have said, you expect the role of the analyst to be, let's say, replaced by AI in the next future. But considering right now, so the progression from analyst to associate to principal and to partner, assuming, of course, that it's not just a matter of time to get promoted, when do you know, or when do you feel or you sense that an employee is already is ready to take this new step with all the challenges that it implies?
Wow, that one is very difficult. I will answer, but that one I still struggle with. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy because it has consequences if you're wrong. Okay, so
that's it.
You can be wrong because you think somebody deserves to go to the next step, but if you're wrong, then you will put that person into a position where things are not going to work, and then you ruin a little bit the relationship or the real flow, right, of work. So it's a very tough decision. And on the other hand, if you wait for too long, this person might leave because, of course, he or she deserves to be doing more important things. So yeah, it's about expectations, but it has to do with the mindset of the people that is growing, right? I love the example because, of course, as you know, you mentioned that at the beginning, I used to be a neurosurgeon before jumping into the dark side of venture capital, but I used to be a neurosurgeon, and I've been, of course, a resident in neurosurgery, willing to operate the next aneurysm that comes to the emergency department. But then I have been as well the senior neurosurgeon, choosing what resident can operate on what case, you know. And typically, because everybody is very intelligent in our field and very bold, of course, and everybody thinks that they can do anything. I mean, they have no limits, right? But we're playing with very important things here. In our case, yeah, you might think it's just money, but it's large amounts of money, right? So you need to be very careful on the responsibilities you give, because if you are too early, you will let the resident operate on aneurysms, but all patients will die, and then yeah, it's the end of that resident. So you need to hold your position in a way and be very thoughtful on when is the right moment. But to be very honest, I don't have like a scale. This is a very difficult question, and I struggle with it. I'm sometimes wrong about this. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it really you don't have a factor saying, okay, if these I don't know, these analysts or these associates really are, let's say, they have already successfully identified this and that. I give a number of, let's say, 3 startups, and then they directly promote, like, for example, in the field of law, different partners
I do have a couple of things that help. If anyone comes work here, I'm giving a couple of tips. There are a couple of things that show me that this person deserves to go up the ladder, and they are: first, if I see real passion on what this person is doing, I really love that. I mean, when I see passion and drive and because again, intelligence, everybody is very intelligent. What differentiates analysts or associates or principals is the passion they put in what they do, and also their hard work capability. You know, I mean, there are no shortcuts to success. Believe me, I mean, you might think that you might get lucky. No, that's nonsense. I mean, life is very long. There are no shortcuts, and you need hard work. Okay, so if I see someone really working hard and with a very passionate mindset, that tells me that this person, maybe we should consider pushing this person up.
Amazing, Luis. Thank you so much. And finishing this third chapter, so the last question, you in your dissertations always refers to this stealth mode that you are, of course, under a lot of NDAs that you cannot disclose or anything, but thinking about innovation and always being ahead of it, in your case at venture capital, how many years in advance do you think, or do you consider right now you are looking into the future?
Well, I have a very personal framework. It's going to sound very weird now, because I'm very obsessed about these type of things. I think very often about how to anticipate the future, which is not an obvious thing, right? But I have like 4 time points. Again, you're gonna say I'm crazy, but I have 4 time points. It's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. Okay, and the 10 years serves more like an anchor, because nobody knows. It's science fiction. I mean, nobody can anticipate the next 10 years. I can promise you that. 1, 3, and 5 are the important ones, and of course 1 and 3 are even more important, right? I would say my best anchor point is 3 years. That's my sweet spot. And because it's the time it takes for us to get the company to the next level, where we can potentially sell the company in an early liquidity event. It doesn't happen very often, but now and then it happens, and we always plan. We always have a plan A for early liquidity event, and that plan A involves a 2 to 3 years period in which we do things in order to get the company sold to a pharma. And I would say I look into 3 years, but for that I use a very detailed framework that I don't share, but it's a very organized process. Believe me. I'm sure if people looked into the whole process, they would say, "Wow, this is less an art and more a science than it looks like," right?
So moving on to the next one, so really focusing now on real world scenarios where you can, let's say, share your experiences and really, let's say, making more amenable and more approachable for let's say people starting in academia and really looking into the future and what, let's say, nowadays they will can find in their futures, where either they are already starting a startup or they have changed to VC. So starting with these potential real world scenarios. So first of all, linking it to the introduction I was making, so how crucial is IP in seed and pre-seed startups? Always considering this publish and perish dilemma, where always IPs always want to publish as quick as possible in order to get other competitors to publish first, and then of course dilute the impact factor of their publications, or really wait until the patent is secure and then really having this option to publish the science.
Yeah, well, I have like a dual answer, and I'm gonna contradict myself, but then wait until the wrap up of how I do combine both things, right? Of course, having intellectual property filed is essential. I mean, because if you want to exploit that asset, you need to have the IP secured and with the rights, not just the patent file, it's just the right IP strategy, patent thicket, etc., right? In order to protect what you do. So yes, IP is incredibly important, and you should file for IP before any publication, because as we all know, a publication might ruin an IP strategy. On the other hand, I never choose a company because it has a perfect IP. You know, I mean, let me just explain myself. It's not an asset that I'm. This company has several flaws, but they have a perfect IP strategy. So this is amazing. I'm gonna invest. No, it's again about the problem, about the delta on patients, about the animal models, the proof of concept you have, about how safety is gonna be, how easy it's gonna be to prove, etc. Right? So IP doesn't play a role. It's just like a sine qua non item to have, but once you have it, it doesn't decide anything. It's just there. It needs to be flawless and pristine, but it is not important in decision making, unless of course you don't have IP, which is then another decision, and we don't even will study the project. But yeah, it's not that important, but you need to have it. I don't know. It's a concept.
Yeah, it's a duality of how to manage and the expectation of really, if you wanna, let's say, commercialize or to scale up your research, or really just to try to publish as quick and as many as possible, let's say in the stake of risking the potentiality of let's say moving into the next dimension of commercialization in translational medicine. Amazing, Luis. Thank you so much. So as you will see, these next 5-6 questions are really concrete examples, so they are not related among them. So this one is, for example, how is the relationship with other co-investors? So in this sense, for example, the series, let's say Series A round leader, for example, Invivo Partners, versus another fund investing, but let's say you are the leader and they are let's say the follower. So how is this relationship? How, let's say, in which position of power or decision making are you when you are a leader versus when you are a follower?
Yeah. Well, with other funds, of course, we cooperate constantly. So it is very important that this relationship is a very good one. Okay. However, I would say that there are different types of investors, in the sense that there are the investors that we are specialized in early stage. We typically invest at the first stage of the company. Our ticket size typically starts at 3, 4, 5 millions as an initial investment, and then you can deploy up to 10 millions per company. This is one size of investor. Typically, we flock together in order to tackle the same problems and the same companies, and we get along very well because we are very aligned. The problem is one very big investor or a couple of them come to the board with tickets of 50, I don't know, plus millions, right? Because when that happens, your initial thesis of, for example, an early liquidity event completely vanishes because they need to deploy the capital, right? So they will force you to get until the end of phase 2 or even until the end of phase 3 because they need very big exits in order to justify their investments. So on that regard, the relationship is very good. But there's a bit of tension because they have different goals, if you know what I mean. And that makes us
more tense,
very
right?
aligned. But boards, I mean, boards are like everything in life. You have good boards, easy boards, difficult boards, terrible boards. I mean, you have everything, right? And when we have a very good board, I really enjoy it because it's peaceful and everybody contributes. Enjoys a lot of quality. It's very enjoyable. There are boards where relationships are a bit more tense depending on the investors. Because it's not just us and our relationship with the rest, it's the rest as well and their relationship among themselves, and you cannot choose exactly how well or how bad they will get along. But at the end of the day, we're all professionals, we're all pragmatic, and we want the best for the company because it's an asset in which we have invested, and we want the best for the patient. So ultimately, we tend to align. It's not often that in a board you need to vote for a decision because typically there's consensus before that. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So moving on to, because people always think that VC, you are, let's say, as you said yourself, the dark side where all the money comes from you, but really you are, let's say, one step ahead. You have your limited partners, so the let's say the institutions or organizations really providing you with this fund. So do you really sense this relationship between yourself and LP to be somehow related to your relationship with a startup in terms of, let's say, how you can influence or how important it is to take this step, because it's the step, as you said, is the step that I as a VC envisage, or is the step I want you to take in terms of, let's say, as again, decision making, envisage the let's say the next chapter or the next goal to achieve by the startup, if it's somehow relatable.
Yeah, well, it's a different relationship in this. I mean, yeah, entrepreneurs need to trust us. We need to trust our LPs. LPs need to trust us. We need to trust our entrepreneurs or CEOs, right? But there's a very big difference. When a CEO complains that how hard it is to get money, I'm tempted to explain, listen, it is actually harder for me than for you, because you at least have a business plan. We can agree on what to do or what not to do, and if we find a common ground, we move ahead, right? But with LPs, they need you don't have a business plan because you don't know where you're going to invest. So they need to trust you with the ultimate trust, which is, okay, I'm putting the money on the table for you, I'm injecting this capital in your fund because I trust your judgment in choosing the right companies to invest. But I cannot explain which companies are going to be because I don't know yet.
I don't know the problems.
So it's a more personal trust. It's a trust based on the person rather than the business plan. You know? I think it's more difficult. I don't know. Maybe I'm complaining too much and I'm crying here, but it's really difficult. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, sure. At the end, as you said, the LPs really just have to, let's say, trust one or two people, while the VC really have to trust not only the CEO but the whole team of the startup. Which at the end, maybe it can be analyzed as more complicated, the LP role, but at the end you just have to put the money on the right person. And in the case of the institutions funding Invivo, I think they already know what they are doing, and of course that they are going to be successful in terms of returns. So thank you very much for sharing. Moving on to the next one. So now let's say we are in a board meeting, and one Invivo member has a proposal to do to the startup in terms of has an opinion that no one has stated before, or has noticed something the startup has overlooked. What is her decision-making power at this board, considering all the ticket sizes are the same, and let's say in terms of whole equality?
Yeah, the rules of governance for the company are set after the investment. I mean, they are set in the shareholders agreement and the investment agreement, right? So we typically set the rules depending on the number of positions at the board. I mean, the number of board directors. We have clear rules on how to take decisions, right? And typically we tend to avoid veto power for a single party. So let's imagine for a second we are a board where there are 5 seats, right? Typically, for something to get approved, we would ask for 4 out of 5 need to vote in favor in order for that to happen, right?
Okay.
And because what happens if someone just decides to block the company? I mean, the chances of someone trying to block the company, well, they are not very high, but it can happen, right?
It can be possible.
Blocking the company, I mean, they should have a real reason in order to do that. So you need to look carefully into the problem. But again, we try to make decisions by consensus all the time. It doesn't make sense to when somebody doesn't agree, the rest of the board directors try to convince him or her that this is not the right course of action. And sometimes we convince that person, and sometimes that person convinces the rest of the board because he or she had a point that we were overlooking, right? So I would say it's not about power, it's about consensus. It's not the power that you can leverage, it's the consensus.
The consensus. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Luis. And maybe moving now to the, let's say, the question, or the most critical question in let's say, figuring out real world scenarios. Firing a CEO. So really, at the end, we have talked about, at the beginning, we have talked about VC to be your child. In this case, Invivo, the startup X is the child of the CEO. So how does it feel for you, if you have already experienced it, to fire a CEO, and which are the main reasons to take such a critical decision?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like... Let me start by saying that last year alone, I changed 5 CEOs of my companies. So that's quite a high number, okay? And these first 2 quarters of the year, I'm changing 2 already. So let me explain, because when people think about what happens when you fire a CEO, you always tend to think that it's a conflictive situation where you're fighting or whatever, and there's nothing like that.
It's not like that.
There's not a fight. I mean, the CEO, when we invest in a company, we do early stage, and we know in advance that the CEO that is now the CEO, when the company gets into the clinics, that person won't be the right CEO for the company, because we need someone really senior. Typically, we bring them from the States, from the north of Europe, now and then from people here in our ecosystem as well. Why not? But he or she needs to be someone who has done this before, and extremely professional, extremely senior, because we're risking our whole investment in that figure, and he or she will need to sell the company when the time comes. So there's a moment in time, typically when you get close to first in human, where I have a conversation with the CEO. I had this conversation at the very beginning because I'm very transparent. I tell them, look, sometimes I change the CEO from the very beginning, but when I do not change the CEO, I explain to the CEO, look, it will come a time when we will sit and we will discuss, you and I, about whether you are or not the right person to lead this. Okay, and let me remind you that I'm talking to the guy or the woman, that you are the founder, which is far more important than being the CEO. You are a founder, you have a very big package of shares, and it is in your best interest to find the right person to sell the company, because it will be an incredible success for you. So I always joke with them, if you allow me again, like a joke, right? But I always tell them, you want to be the guy at the board with a cigar, you know, say to the CEO, you did really great this year, I'm doubling your bonus. That's where you want to be. Not, I mean, managing
Nothing
for the
else.
sake of managing, it doesn't make sense. So yes, we typically change the CEO when the right time comes, and now and then there's a situation where you change the CEO in a more difficult way, which is a completely different situation, but now and then you need to do it. If the performance is really bad and things are not working well, then you need to find. I always thought that the number one job of a board is choosing the CEO, whether the person stays or leaves, and the next one. This is a matter. I mean, ultimately, it is the shareholders meeting, the one that approves, right? But it is a board decision ultimately, if you know what I mean. So.
Amazing. Yeah, I had figured out that probably it was, let's say, far more dramatic. So as you said at the beginning of your explanation, that it's not at all a discussion, but it's rather more than a negotiation in terms of, okay, we have arrived at this point where business is getting more important than science, because science is already secured, and let's say we have, let's say, this lead compound or therapy. So, and at the end, let's say, if it's a reasonable CEO, as you say, if he or she wants the best for its baby child, it's really to become this adolescent in terms of that someone wants to buy it. So yeah, amazing, Luis. And moving on to the last question of this section, and before starting our last section, which is the most, let's say, interesting, or let's say not expected ones in terms of AI. So how long can negotiations for an exit take? And if, again, as always, these present-past comparisons, did you feel the same emotions between when you started having exits and right now? And here, maybe if you allow me a short essay, maybe you can describe the experience of your last big success with the sale of the Belgian startup SO Biotech to Astra for almost, or for up to $1 billion.
Yeah, a couple of things here. First, the emotions are always very high. I mean, it's a very emotional moment in time, because in order to sell a company, believe me, I mean, stars need to align. I mean, it is very difficult. And let me tell you very humbly that luck always plays a role, right? I mean, in our several exits, we had several exits. Humbly, I think very good ones. And I can always trace back or pinpoint the moment in time where we were a bit lucky, you know, and wow, this went really well, and that opened that, and that led to, and then finally the liquidity event happens. So there's an element of luck. However, luck usually, there are companies where we have bad luck as well, because luck balances itself. The important thing is to have a sufficient N of companies in order for luck to be balanced, and we are lucky in some companies, we are not lucky in some others, but it is very important. Also, I want to mention that if you think about in a very simple way, the steps for any company, I mean, choosing the company, managing the company in order to create value, and selling the company. If you do these three category moments in time, of course, choosing the company and managing the company are the moments in time where we add a lot of value. The final one, which is selling the company, typically is a joint effort among all the board directors and a banker. Okay, we typically hire one banker. I don't care. We've worked with many of them. Last one, for example, Centerview, right? And they are extremely good at what they do, and they will always be better than us, venture capital funds, at what they do. So we typically rely on them. So there's a part of the action and a part of the congratulations that you need to give, not only to the board, but also to the banker that has participated in the final sale. Because the best scenario possible is to receive a term sheet and that term sheet is a good one, but then a banker's job is precisely to find other bidders, maybe interested in the asset and putting more money on the table. Right?
Exactly.
And that bidding and competition scenario is the one that typically
is the most profitable for you, of course.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
No, I was mentioning that you asked me to describe very briefly the story of ESO Biotech.
Yeah, exactly. How long did the negotiations take to
this
sell?
Is a typical example of one of our plan A's, because it was a company that there was no round open. It was a high conviction bet. We wanted in, and the company was not interested at first because they said, look, we are financed, and let's wait for the next round, right? But we had such an extreme conviction in that one that we convinced the board and we convinced the CEO that, you don't leave money on the table, and we were adding expertise to that company, of course, as well. And finally, we managed to get in via a convertible note, right? And we converted immediately at the next round, but then we were just 3 funds in the company with a very small of money invested, and it was just 16 months,
16 months.
16 months, and the upfront was 425. So that is indeed creation of value. So we were
amazing.
Very happy with that outcome. Yes.
Amazing. Yeah, only three funds, as you said, is a clear example of, as we have discussed a lot, the Appetizer, that when you really identify the problem and you really, let's say, find the startup and you help evolving and consolidating, at the end you can have examples of success with startups, or let's say companies that are not so backed up in terms of a lot of rounds of founding, and really with three funds. In the case of Invivo, they already were successful in selling the company. So now, Luis, really, it's a moment, first of all, to say thank you until now. This last part is AI in the VC world, or in our world. So here is rather more than a dessert than an appetizer, because really it's during the, let's say, the post-prime real moment where the more philosophical questions arises. So really, three different questions, completely different between them, but again, it's just for you to get philosophical, and for you to share your beautiful mind in terms of how your vision of the world and in the vision of AI, how do you expect AI to evolve more than as an ancillary tool, but again acquiring some degree of consciousness. So So let's say AI in your case, let's say she recommends you, okay, Luis, I'm 80% sure this is a good startup. This startup is going to get an exit. But at the end, 3 years have gone and the startup hasn't progressed as expected. So nowadays, I assume not, but again, it's for you to answer it. Do AIs have sense of guilt? So I have done badly. I assume 80% of chance, at the end it was 0. And on these matters, are they able to recognize their own errors? And if not, if you consider it necessary for AIs, not only in VC, of course, but AI, which is dominating the world, to acquire a sense of guilt?
So, yeah, what an interesting question. I love the question because I care about this, and I struggle with the concepts. As you know, you've said that I was a neurosurgeon. I have a PhD in neuroscience, so I care about how the brain works, and I care about what consciousness is. Because when you're asking me if the AI can have guilt, in fact, what you're asking me is whether an AI can be conscious or not.
Of course.
Right? So, let me explain now a couple of things. I will answer your question, but I need to do some preliminary concepts, right? First concept is consciousness is not a on-off state, right? It's like intelligence. There's a degree, there's a continuum of states of consciousness. I mean, of course, human beings are conscious, and a stone is not conscious. But if I'm prepared, for example, to admit that a worm, C. elegans, for example, it has 302 neurons. I mean, it's an animal model. Well, not an animal, of course, but if it moves away from toxic things and it moves towards food or nutrients, etc., and it reacts to the environment, I think we all will agree that it has a very, very small degree of consciousness. And the same with, I don't know, a small animal, a mice, for example. Of course, it is conscious, it is alive, right? And but it is not as conscious as we are, right? So consciousness, first of all, is a continuum, not an on-off state. And this is very important to understand what I'm about to say now, because for all I know, Joan, and excuse me for this challenge, but for all I know, I don't know whether you are conscious or not, because I don't have direct access to your consciousness, right? So there's no surrogate endpoint or biomarker that can tell me that you're conscious. I'm just inferring that you're conscious because you behave like you're conscious, okay? So the question whether an AI is conscious or not, first of all, from a pragmatic perspective, doesn't make sense because I don't have a way of knowing,
of measuring,
but I know it behaves as it is conscious. Okay, so from a pragmatic point of view, I think the question makes no sense. They will behave as conscious, and we will identify with them as conscious beings. That's my analysis, at least.
Amazing.
On
So
on an ethical point of view, it's a bit different because you can raise questions of morality. Can we shut down an AI, for example, knowing it is conscious? And this is a problem that I don't know right now. My humble answer here, Joan, excuse me, but this question I don't have an answer. Because
and do you consider it necessary in case they I mean, considering the question now that you have evaluated, but if it would be possible, would you confer this consciousness to AI?
I don't think intelligence needs to be conscious, but I think it will happen. If it hasn't happened yet, because in a way, if we are prepared to accept that a C. elegans with 302 neurons is slightly conscious, how can't I understand that in a very different way, a large language model that has 1 trillion already connections is not slightly conscious, even if it's a different type of consciousness. We humans tend to anthropomorphize
everything,
and we think that our consciousness is the only form of consciousness in the universe. Maybe it is not. Maybe there are other forms of consciousness, collective consciousness between animals, or artificial consciousness, and maybe they have different characteristics, but nevertheless they are conscious in a way, right? So
amazing. Thank you so much, Luis, for this reflection. And moving on, we are now, well, not only witnessing but also realizing in our nowadays daily basis that in a world where AI gets dominating in almost every sector, every field of our lives, how decisive will human soft skills be in the next, say, 5-10 years, where AI is really not only, let's say, trying to conquer all the fields of life, but already dominating and let's say getting deeper and deeper into our lives?
Yes, well, for the moment, I think human soft skills are very, very necessary, meaning that no AI, in my opinion, and I'm a true believer in AI, yeah? But I don't think AI has these soft skills of knowing how to read a room or how to judge the character of someone, and because it has to do with experience. But at the end of the day, let me contradict myself again here. At the end of the day, soft skills are just electrical signals or chemical signals in our brain. It's just a pattern recognition. My answer is it will eventually happen. For now, we are the apex on soft skills, but we will be replaced as well. I mean, replace is not the right word. Machines or artificial intelligence will have the same soft skills that we do have. I see no reason why that would not happen.
Amazing. So you are not only an AI believer, but also a truly convinced expert. So perfect, Luis. And then really moving to the last question. Well, it's a triple question. It's a bonus track question where you really have to focus, or let's say choose one of the three that are going to pop up. So the first one is AI is expected to take over let's say calculated around 50% of current job positions in the near future. So we follow in parallel by the extension of life expectancy to 100 years. What societal model do you envisage? Or, of course, in a more general view or perspective. The second one is, in a world run by machines, is there still place, or will be there still place for human free will and decision making, as we have discussed along the appetizers? And the last one is if AI will develop compassion, again, more or less, not coming back to consciousness, but let's say human-like feelings, like compassion for human along its process of conquering the world the way we know it nowadays. So you have to choose one of them and elaborate a little bit.
You love to end your podcast with a very difficult question, right? I mean, it is like the ultimate case for your host, for your guest. Which one will I choose? I think the most important one is the first one. What's going to be the model of society, right? Yeah, and I honestly don't know. I mean, there are two levels of worry here. The first level, of course, the ultimate level is worried. People are worried about the fact that AI could eventually dominate us, right? Or be a threat to humanity. I'm not that worried about that one, although I'm very happy that some people are looking carefully into that one. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm more like a techno-optimist. I think in the same way we instill the right ethics in our kids, we're going to train AIs in a way that, I mean, we can train them. Maybe it's a bit naive what I just said, but I think we will know how to do that eventually. I know we're going without a map, we're moving forward too fast, way too fast, but I think we'll find a way to coexist, right? But there's a previous level of being worried, which I think it's very worrying, which is the disruption in society that this will bring. I mean, these days precisely, there are lots of gurus and high key opinion leaders in Wall Street and among the technology companies, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, etc., that are starting to warn society that high unemployment rate is coming. And that's so true. Because imagine yourself for a second, imagine you're the CEO of a company that is calling clients for doing something, right? If you know, and you have, 500 employees in a floor specially devoted to call, right? If you know one AI can do the job for, 1/10 of the cost, and you are listed on the NASDAQ, for example, and your competitors are moving into the space so they will publish better results than you, etc., you're the CEO of the company. What do? I mean, you need to fire those 500 people in order to keep on competing, because your job is to maintain and increase the value of the company for your shareholders, right? So it's a no-brainer that you need to fire them. And we will see very big layoffs They are already starting, by the way, but they will become very apparent, I think, in 2026, next year. And this is going to be a real problem. We better start working carefully in a universal basic income sort of thing.
Plan.
Yeah, because
amazing.
And we derive meaning from what we do for a living, and I'm worried about the psychological consequences of knowing that a machine is doing things much better than you. And of course it will happen earlier in some jobs as compared with others, right? But eventually there will be people out of a job because an AI does the job better than them. And what's the meaning? I mean,
the life meaning for themselves.
It's gonna be tough. I don't know. It's uncharted territory. So we'll see.
Amazing, Luis. Again, with these questions, and there are many questions that remain that we could not, due to time restraints, ask. So really, here you have Luis. Again, a massive thank you for this amazing first episode of Biotech Appetizers here at Nucleate Spain, and for this fantastic interview where we've learned a couple of tiny and big things. So first of all, we can maybe, in order to put as bullet points, maybe summarize into the learning of how to start in venture capital coming from bioscience, in this case from medicine, how a routine workday in a VC focus on biotech is let's say conducted, and also focusing on the most cutting edge technologies, and learn invaluable lessons from Luis' personal experiences. Also how humans relations are in such a competitive field as we see, and how they interact among them. And we have also explored the different roles of the VC world, and we've ended up digging into Luis' brilliant mind about AI and unraveling the potential existence or not of AI consciousness. And the last one, Luis has chosen to, let's say, put the last point into the AI as a threat, or AI as really a savior. We will see. Maybe, Luis, we can have a next episode in the next year and see the progression of how AI is integrating in our daily lives, not only at home but also at work. And again, thank you so much for attending and for your time, which is invaluable. So thank you very much.
It's been great, Joan. Thank you for having me, and let's keep in touch.